is a sperm whale screeching somewhere below you right now, but you will never hear it. If you were close enough, the sound it makes would end you. 230 decibels. That is louder than a space shuttle launch. Loud enough that the pressure wave alone would liquefy your internal organs before you even processed hearing it. The clicks it produces, short, sharp, rhythmic, sound nothing like what you would call communication. They sound like someone tapping a pipe in a dark basement. Random, mechanical, meaningless. Scientists said the same thing for 60 years. They were wrong, completely, historically, irreversibly wrong. Because what researchers have discovered over the last 3 years, using AI systems powerful enough to find patterns that human ears and human brains physically cannot detect, is that these animals are not tapping pipes. They have a phonetic alphabet. They produce vowel sounds. They speak in regional dialects so consistent that 60 seconds of recording is enough to identify which ocean a whale grew up in. They live in multi-generational clans of up to 20,000 individuals, pass their language from mother to calf across centuries, coordinate group behavior through structured vocal exchanges, and were recorded in 2025 doing something that researchers had no scientific framework to describe until it happened in front of their equipment. The communication system is so structured that linguists are now asking whether the definition of language needs to be rewritten. And all of it traces back to a single methodological decision made by one researcher, a decision so simple that when he described it at a conference, the room went quiet. I'll tell you what that decision was, but first, let me show you what we were actually dealing with. Let's be clear about something up front. Sperm whales are not just large, they are not just impressive, they are, by almost every biological measure, one of the most extreme animals that has ever existed on this planet. 20 meters, 60 tons, a brain that weighs 9 kilograms, the largest brain in the recorded history of life on Earth, 6 times heavier than yours. They dive to 2,000 meters and stay down for 90 minutes, hunting giant squid in complete darkness. The water pressure at that depth would destroy the hull of a military submarine. Inside their enormous rectangular head, and it is genuinely rectangular, a massive biological box, sits a structure called the spermaceti organ, a cavity as large as a small car, packed with dense waxy oil. Whalers spent 200 years hunting these animals specifically for that oil. They assumed wrongly that it was reproductive material. What it actually is, a biological acoustic lens, the most powerful sound-focusing mechanism ever evolved. The whale fires a click inside this organ. The oil shapes it. The skull behind it amplifies it, and the result travels hundreds of kilometers through open ocean. For decades, scientists assumed this extraordinary sound system had one function: echolocation, a biological sonar for navigating darkness and locating prey. The clicks were a hunting tool, nothing more. The idea that they might also carry meaning between individuals was treated as romanticism, not science. But in the 1980s, a marine biologist named Hal Whitehead began noticing things in the field that didn't fit that explanation. When two family groups met after months apart, they exchanged clicks in what looked like a structured greeting. When a calf was born, the whole group gathered and clicked in unison. When one whale was distressed, others moved toward it, and the clicking between them changed. Most strikingly, whales from different parts of the ocean clicked differently. Consistent patterns within populations, distinct patterns between them. Not the random variation you would expect from a purely functional tool. The structured variation you would expect from a learned behavior. No one could prove it. The data problem was simply too large. To establish that these patterns were meaningful rather than coincidental, you would need thousands of hours of recordings and a way to analyze patterns operating at speeds and frequencies that human perception cannot reliably process. For 40 years, that is where the research sat. Suspected. Undecipherable. Then the AI arrived. In 2022, marine biologist Shane Gero Bensain, who had spent 2 decades following a single family of sperm whales off the coast of Dominica and had assembled a database of nearly 9,000 individual coda recordings, brought that database to a team at MIT. What followed was Project CETI, Cetacean Translation Initiative, not a marine biology project. a multidisciplinary effort. Computer scientists, cryptographers, linguists, roboticists, acoustic engineers, all working towards something that had never been attempted. Treating sperm whale coders not as animal sounds to be catalogued, but as an unknown communication system to be decoded, the same way a linguist approaches an undiscovered human language. The first results came in 2024, published in Nature Communications. The MIT team's machine learning algorithms had found something that 40 years of human analysis had missed entirely. Sperm whale coders are not a fixed repertoire of signals. They are built for acoustic features: rhythm, the spacing pattern between clicks; tempo, the overall speed; rubato, a subtle timing shift relative to the immediately preceding coda; and ornamentation, the addition of extra clicks in specific contexts, combined freely to generate a vast and flexible range of distinct vocal patterns. The researchers called it a sperm whale phonetic alphabet, not a list of fixed calls, a generative system, a set of building blocks that whales assemble in real time based on who they are talking to and what was just said. The feature that stopped the team was rubato. It only appears in conversation. You cannot detect it in a recording of one whale alone. It only emerges when you examine an exchange between two whales and ask whether the second whale's coda changed in response to the first whale's coda. It had, every time, across thousands of exchanges. That is not stimulus and response. That is active listening, real-time adjustment based on what was just said. That is the functional definition of dialogue. But that was only the beginning. What happened in 2025 is what I promised you at the start, the single methodological decision that changed everything. Gaspar Begusch is a linguist at UC Berkeley, and he had been running the coda recordings through every phonetic analysis tool available without finding what he was looking for. The combinatorial structure was clear, but something underneath it kept not appearing. Then he attended a conference where two elephant researchers mentioned something in passing. When elephants hear their own name, they sometimes take several minutes to respond, not because they fail to hear, because their internal processing operates on a different timescale. These are animals that gestate for 2 years and live for 70. Time moves differently in their biology. Begusch looked at sperm whales. 14 to 16 months of gestation, 8 years of nursing, heart rates at depth that drop below 10 beats per minute. He asked a question no one had thought to ask. What if the analysis had been running at the wrong speed? He did something simple. He took the recordings, accelerated the playback, and removed the silences. Inside the compressed audio, stable spectral patterns appeared that had been invisible at normal speed. Two distinct formant structures, the acoustic signatures that differentiate vowel sounds in human speech. One pattern with a single dominant frequency peak, one with two, consistent across hundreds of codas, consistent across different individual whales. The whales were not just clicking, they were shaping the acoustic properties of each click through active filtering, the same mechanism humans use to move between vowel sounds, and doing so in ways that produced consistent, distinguishable categories. The paper was published in Open Mind. For the first time in the history of animal communication research, vowel-like sounds had been identified in a non-human species using standard phonetic methodology. Inside those clicks, in the dark, 2,000 meters down, something was happening that looked acoustically and structurally like speech. Here is where it becomes something more than biology. Sperm whales do not just communicate, they have culture. Hal Whitehead's 4 decades of field research have documented clan structures averaging 20,000 females each, distinguished from other clans almost entirely by vocal dialect, specific coda patterns that function as markers of group identity across ocean basins. When two clans occupy the same waters, their clicking patterns remain distinct. When individuals encounter members of a different clan, their vocal behavior changes in ways that parallel how humans adjust speech in cross-cultural encounters. These dialects are not inherited, they are transmitted. Calves are born without them. Over months of immersion in their family group, they produce imperfect, incomplete versions of the adult patterns, acoustic babbling, and gradually refine their clicks until they are indistinguishable from the family's dialect. Remove the calf from its family, and that transmission breaks. The dialect has to be passed individually through sustained contact. Whitehead's research shows that this transmission carries more than sound. Young whales acquire hunting strategies, navigation knowledge, cooperative care behaviors, and social roles through the same channels, not through genes, through contact with older members of the group who already know. The most precise documentation of that society came in 2025 when Project CETI's recording equipment captured a sperm whale birth in full. 11 adult females gathered. They coordinated physically to bring the newborn to the surface, and throughout the entire event they produced structured, contextually varying vocalizations that tracked the stages of what was happening between them. Not alarm calls, not distress signals, coordinated communication during a coordinated event. Now, let's be precise about what has and has not been established, because the honest version of this matters. We have not translated sperm whale language. We cannot point to a coda and say what it means. We cannot ask a whale a question and understand its answer. That work has not been done, and anyone who claims otherwise is ahead of the evidence. What has been established is the structure underneath the meaning, a phonetic system with combinatorial rules. Vowel-like contrasts produced through active acoustic shaping. Conversational responsiveness that operates at the sub-second level. Cultural transmission of dialect and knowledge across generations. These are the structural prerequisites of language, and they have now been documented in sperm whale communication with the same rigor applied to human phonetics. Project CETI's next phase is aimed at connecting that structure to content. Acoustic tags on free-swimming whales. Underwater cameras tracking physical behavior in parallel with sound production. The goal is a corpus large enough to begin matching specific coda patterns to specific contexts. Who was present, what was happening, what changed afterwards. The same method used to decode ancient scripts without a translation key. Daniela Rus, director of MIT's Computer Science and AI Laboratory, said at the 2024 publication that the results challenge the assumption held by many linguists that combinatorial communication is a trait unique to our species. Begush went further. In a 2026 interview, he argued that documented evidence of language-like structure in another species creates direct pressure on the legal frameworks that currently treat all non-human animals as property rather than as communicating individuals. If the structural distinction between human language and sperm whale communication is smaller than we assumed, the ethical distinction built on top of it becomes harder to defend. Here is what I think matters most about how this happened. We did not get here through a sudden leap of genius. We got here because someone was willing to ask whether we had been listening at the wrong speed. The answer was sitting in 60 years of recordings that every previous researcher had analyzed correctly, just at human tempo, looking for human-scaled patterns in an animal that processes the world on a completely different timescale. It took an AI capable of finding structure in data volumes no human team could process. It took a linguist trained in phonetics rather than marine biology. It took a willingness to treat an ocean animal as a potential communication partner rather than a subject of observation. For 2 centuries, we hunted sperm whales to the edge of extinction for the oil in their heads. We used that oil to light our lamps. The same organs we were rendering down for fuel contain the most sophisticated biological sound system ever evolved, producing a communication structure. We are only now, in 2024 and 2025, developing the tools to begin to read. They have been talking the whole time, in dialects passed from mother to calf for thousands of generations, through a phonetic system built from 4 features that combine into thousands of distinct patterns. In real-time exchanges, sensitive enough that one whale adjusts its next coda based on the precise acoustic content of what it just heard from another. Across 35 million years of ocean, in the dark, at depths that would kill us, they have been talking. And we are only now learning to listen. If this changed how you think about what is alive in the ocean, share it with someone who still thinks of the sea as empty. Subscribe if you want to know what comes next, because Project CETI's next experiment involves playing a synthetic coda back to a living whale to see whether she responds, whether she answers, whether she tries to continue the conversation. But before you go, if we do eventually understand what they are saying to each other, what is the first thing you would want to ask? About the giant squid? About what 90 minutes in total darkness actually feels like? About whether they have noticed us following them around in our metal boats? Leave it in the comments. I want to know. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.